I'd like to introduce Mathieu Deflem, who is a professor of sociology at the University of South Carolina, where he teaches courses on sociology of law, social control, theory, and popular culture. In the area of culture, he has written about Lady Gaga, Alfred Hitchcock, music censorship, and ritual. Deflem's undergraduate course, Lady Gaga and the Sociology of Fame, attracted worldwide attention and bestowed upon him his own modicum of celebrity. Today, Deflem is offering a talk entitled Professor Goes Gaga, Teaching Lady Gaga and the Sociology of Fame, which will be followed by a conversation with two student respondents, Thea Rockwell and Larry Miller. Please join me in welcoming Professor Deflem.
Okay, thank you. So I'm the Gaga professor, so I'm the guy who teaches the Lady Gaga course that some of you may have heard of. What I want to talk about today is the fact, let's say, I'm going to talk about how I organized the class initially, what my ideas were going into it. Then I'll tell you a little bit how I actually planned the class itself, the content of the course. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the impact that organizing this class had, a kind of more on me rather than anything else. So I guess coming out of this talk will be a little bit the notion that if one does a course or something, that maybe somehow is considered to be astounding about somebody famous, then one tends to become part of that fame itself. That is actually what happened to me, right? I'm a long-time music fan. That is part of the context that is inescapable. In 1973, I bought my first record, which you see here. It's Billion Dollar Babies by the Alice Cooper Group, which is still one of the best records of the 1970s. It's produced by Bob Ezrin, who later produced The Wall by Pink Floyd. So it's a very, very, very good record. That's the start of it. The second phase was this. This is 1979, and I'm in there someplace. This is the Pink Pop Festival in Geleen. That's in Holland. That's very, very close to where I was born. I was born right at the border with Holland. Next up, skip a few years, and then suddenly it's January 9, 2009. I'm just on my way home from Belgium, actually, and in South Carolina I have a VCR ready, and I was going to watch it. And then this is 2010. 2010, I think that at this time I can do something which in the beginning of my career I think I could not have done, that is namely do something professional with something that I also have a strong personal interest in. Nonetheless, it's very important for me to say that, and actually I said it from the start of organizing the course. The course is not about the music of Lady Gaga. Socially relevant because it preoccupies a large segment of society. And in my sociology, I always study issues that come from society, which you might think is evident in sociology, but sadly it is not. And so the perspective is sociological. The topic is fame, culture of fame, but then I would actually argue that the only thing really exceptional about the course is that it follows a case study approach. What I did then is I made my own course web pages. That is actually something that I've been doing for a very long time. I thought it would be useful to register a short name, and so gagacourse.net gives you this blog that gives information about the site. And then there was a story, and that's this one, in the Daily Gamecock, printed later in October. I think it's October 28, 2010. And it was under the heading Professor Goes Gaga, so that's obviously where I got the title from. That was the beginning of everything. And then there was this huge avalanche. That was October 28th. Then it happened so quickly. On the same day, there was a news release from the university that was picked up, first of all, by a blog of the Washington Post. When it got picked up by the Washington Post, a reporter at the New York Times saw it, and I got a phone call from the New York Times. So within a few, so it was reported locally. There was actually a local television station that did a short segment about it. And then it was on the Washington Post, and then it was on the New York Times. And then 3 days later, I was already sending an email to a friend of mine to say, this attention is getting totally overwhelming, because there was a complete avalanche of all kinds of reporting, and it all went global. And then actually there were several news stories devoted to the course, and obviously then I did some interviews, particularly with media sources that I trusted. you know, like MSNBC. I did an interview with Tamron Hall. I did an interview on ABC. I did an interview with Gayle King on the radio, you know, so stuff like that. And as you can see, I was obviously, I mean, now I'm pretty pleased with it too, of course, right? Like for several days in late October, early November, actually the chorus was the top Lady Gaga story. And the news about the chorus on Google News even beat out the Lady Gaga Halloween costume. So I thought, you know, I was more important than Lady Gaga's Halloween, so that's okay. See, nonetheless, it tells you a little bit more about, let's say, media reporting. Another thing that happened actually is that my name, Mathieu Deflem, was a Google trending topic at some point. There's not a lot of sociology professors, I think, whose name is a trending topic, and not a lot of USC members either. It's apparently an honor that I, as a member of University of South Carolina, share with only one other name, and that's Steve Spurrier, the football coach, who is, of course, continually a trending topic. But you see here, me at one time, you know, it's something, right? This is some of the attention that you get, you know, Lady Gaga is part of the Illuminati, right? See, and so my university course is too. Judging from the number of spelling mistakes and grammatical errors that the people make who believe in these kind of things, I think that says something about the validity of their thinking there, right? It's just really horrible. And then let's talk a little bit, it's kind of to end it. I just wanted to say something about the student impact. So I talked about the media. I talked about some of the online impact, emails that I was getting, the communication. So in all other respects, you know, it's a regular class. And fortunately, there have been some follow-up reports, and some students actually have communicated about the course. And, you know, it's all been good news. There have been endorsements from some other college newspapers. Among them, I noticed that Daly, Pennsylvania, they actually wrote an editorial very favorable about the idea of the course and about constructing courses that are relatable to interests of students. But I also think, of course, the environment in which that takes place is very important. Another thing that has happened is I'm very active on Twitter and Facebook and so on, primarily as a fan. But then as a fan, I also do routine searches. You know, when are references made to this, you know, like for instance to the conference, to Lady Gaga, to sociology. And here you have, what you here see is the following. These are references on Twitter to Lady Gaga and Professor, because I thought if I do a search for Lady Gaga Professor, I'll see references to me. But what I saw was these are all references to all kinds of professors all over the country and other countries and so on. And what I found very striking is that most of those references are actually not in courses that have anything to do with Lady Gaga. Like sometimes it will be like, let's say, oh, in political science we are talking about gay rights, and the professor mentioned something about Lady Gaga. That makes sense. But sometimes it's like, I'm in a chemistry class and they're playing Lady Gaga. I don't know why. You know, it's like stuff like we're waiting for the results of an experiment, and in the meantime he's showing us the Alejandro video or something. So it'll just be used, you know, for fluff, for fun, and it's out there. Another part, this is more recent, and that is that Lady Gaga has begun to appear in sociology books. Sometimes indeed in a very how shall I say, very superficial way. You know, there'll be a chapter on sex and gender, and there'll be a picture of Lady Gaga, something like that. You know, very, very superficial, usually nothing too serious. There have been some other, actually in the meantime, of course, there are other courses and so on. If you're interested in Lady Gaga herself, she's spoken about the course on 3 occasions. Once, that was the coolest part, of course. This was in February 2011. There was a 60-minute segment about Lady Gaga, an interview with Anderson Cooper. And that interview was originally conducted, so it aired in February 2011, but it was originally conducted in November 2010, right along the time when they were all talking about my course. And so he asked a couple of questions, and she responds to it, obviously not knowing what my course is really about, but that's okay, because this was right during the first semester that we were teaching the course. And I told the students, check out 60 Minutes. I haven't seen it, but check it out. And she makes reference to the Sociology of Fame on 2 occasions. So the next day in class, everybody's like, she talked about us, she talked about us. And you see 50 students, like here, you know, it's like very normal. But it was on TV. Then a little later, it was on the radio with Carson Daly that she talked about it. I was very fortunate that Carson Daly thought that USC was in Los Angeles, but that he never said what USC stood for. So it was just USC, 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 and then talk about the course. And then she once talked about it in Mexico that I don't have anything about. But that was a few weeks before there was the Saturday Night Live episode. And then there was this particular TV segment with Justin Timberlake and Lady Gaga. And at some point, Lady Gaga says, "There's my fan." And then this guy appears. And at this point, he goes by the name Alphonse. So it was actually based on this picture of mine that's been online. This picture was used a couple of times in news reporting. So then I thought, well, yeah, I guess. So I got a lot of attention from this one, too, although mostly, actually, my name is not Alphonse. But this is my cat, and my cat's name is Alphonse, so that's so he's a lot cuter than I am, even, right? Finally, what do sociologists have to say about this? Other sociologists about my course? Here's a visualization of what the other sociologists have to say about my course. Nothing. There has been absolutely no attention in sociology. I've been in American sociology for 20 years. I've been very active, actually, as a professional in various associations, up until a few years ago at least. And very high profile, but there has been no discussion with one exception, no, two exceptions. And the first exception actually was a blog. And it was a blog that generated an astonishing 5 comments. And it was all dismissive. And it was done by a sociologist at Northwestern who shall remain nameless, because he is nameless. Even if I would mention his name, you would not know who this is. And he says, what the hell is he doing now? And then there came a comment from a sociologist which was a little bit more painful, because it's somebody I know, somebody that I've spoken to, somebody that I know, and somebody that knows me, and who made the astonishing comment. He said, well, I'm glad to see he is doing something else for a change, but he has absolutely no credentials in the sociology of music and culture. So that was that, which is rather astonishing, because it was my initial specialty. I've been doing this for 20, 30 years, although not as a primary specialty, but anyway. And that was it. And it generated 5 comments, and that was that. So this was at the time when I generated 800,000 comments, and they generated 5. So that maybe tells you something about the state of sociology today. The other exception was this. There is a professional association in this country called the American Sociological Association, ASA, and the ASA is the largest association of sociologists, and I've been very, very active in that association up until 2 years ago when I resigned my membership. They knew I was not a member anymore. Nonetheless, in the news section, my course was reported. And then a few months later again, I was actually invited to do a seminar, a teaching seminar, at the ASA annual meeting later this year in Denver. And they said, why don't you do a seminar on teaching Lady Gaga in the sociology of fame? And I then immediately decided not to do that for the ASA, but to prepare a paper on that topic, and to prepare that paper as soon as I would get a serious offer or a serious invitation. And then, of course, I got the email from Anna, and that's why I'm pleased to tell you this. And I think you make a much better audience than sociology. Okay? So if you're interested in a little bit more, you just Google my name. You find my webpage under my own name, MathieuDeflem.net. The course page is at gagacourse.net, and if you're a music fan, that's a totally separate issue, but if you're also a fan and you're interested like in some of the concerts that I go to and pictures and videos and all that kind of stuff, it's Gaga Front Row. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you.